Hello, this is Matt Bergman, and you are listening to the Punk Rock Libertarians Podcast, episode 74. I'm here tonight with Josh Strav.
Stavrakoglu, man. Come on.
I'm going to call you Strav.
Just call me Josh, please.
Okay. New York Josh.
That works better.
Hand job Josh. Okay. And Alex Miller.
Yo.
Hi, Alex. First time I heard about you, it was earlier this week, and I saw you debate Chase Rachels. And you were arguing for left libertarianism, or the case for left libertarianism, or expressing why you consider yourself to be a left libertarian, or why you identify as such. And, you know, Chase Rachels was talking anarcho-capitalism.
Right.
And, you know, like, I don't know, like, my thing, like, I feel like a lot of people, like, when they hear left libertarian, they think, oh, this guy's a fucking communist. This guy's trying to force me how to do shit. Why don't you, like, in your own words, your best description, like, you know, tell everybody what left libertarianism is to you.
Sure. So first off, I'll say that my introduction into what I'll call libertarianism or anarchism was a mix of punk rock, which is part of the reason I'm very happy to be here, and the other part was Ayn Rand, and that was the first my intellectual awakening. Like,
dude, I always thought Ayn Rand was a bitch, though, dude.
Probably in real life. Like, her personality, I understand she's not very likable.
No, oh, dude, have you ever seen interviews with her? Like, where she's being interviewed on a platform?
Yeah.
Do you ever wonder if Ayn Rand was moist?
What?
Ayn Rand, I don't...
Can honestly
dude,
say
Alex,
that.
why would you talk about that, dude?
I'm not sure I want to discuss her level of moistness. But
yeah, so, and I will say, like, it started with The Fountainhead, and then I read Atlas Shrugged, and then some of her nonfiction. And I will say, like, I really fell in love with it. And then I heard a critique from Roy Childs, who basically, it was the whole, like, hey, Ayn Rand, you believe in the non-aggression principle. So, and he argued why that invalidates the state, and you can't hold the two simultaneously and be consistent. So, shortly after getting into Iran, I started getting into individualist libertarian anarchism. And then, gosh, back in 2009, I want to say, I got into Stefan Molyneux. And anyway, for years, I considered myself an ANCAP. So this was a perspective that I was coming from when I first moved to Texas. And some of my best friends considered themselves mutualists or left libertarians. And we wanted, and I didn't necessarily get it at the time, but there were these people that I liked. So we formed a group called Alliance of the Libertarian Left in Austin, Texas. So, and that was kind of my introduction, was by some of these friends. And
which friends are these?
I wouldn't say anyone famous.
Yeah.
Just folks, just good folks I met down in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I found that they had concerns, they had considerations, they had different filters, like, through which they developed that they use different from my historical intellectual evolution. But I found that, like, very quickly, you know, these people weren't enemies. So I was almost like a lot of libertarians who, whenever the word left is used, my guard was dropped. Like, I didn't fear it anymore because I knew some of these people, I knew what they meant. And the more I got into it, I found that not only was it perfectly compatible with what I would say libertarianism, libertarian property rights, etc., but even I think they, even with that those grounds, have more consistent conclusions than what you'll commonly hear from certain ANCAPs. So
I don't know, though. You got to say, though, Chase was pretty consistent.
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, he was great at talking the talking points. I think he's great with his answers, and, like, that's one thing where I agree with him. Mm-hmm. I think, like, you know, sometimes I feel like with some left libertarians, there's just too many rules involved, you know.
Or you can't understand what they're saying.
Outside of the non-aggression
What do you
principle.
mean occupancy and use? And you can't get a straight answer. For years, yeah, I had similar frustrations.
And I mean, like you know, I'm a huge fan of Carl Hess, to the point where I'd say he's my favorite libertarian in history, hands down. You know, and a lot of that might just be like, I love his personality. I love listening to him speak. He just seems like he'd be a good good dude to shoot the shit with, you know. But then I don't know. I just feel like the dude made a lot of sense, and I've kind of fell in love with like the phrase like anarchism without hyphens.
Yeah.
Because I mean, because I look at it like with my understanding of left libertarianism, you know, yeah, like you said, it's pretty compatible, and anarcho-capitalism, you know, it's the reason why I wouldn't want to use that term is one reason is because capitalism has a negative connotation with it, and I can see why it does, because you know everything like with like the EpiPen or whatever, everybody says, oh well, that's capitalism, you know. So like I'm more of a fan of like the left term market anarchist.
Right.
Which is basically the same fucking thing, if you ask me.
I mean, ultimately, I think the label isn't what should be the most important. It should be the underlying ideas behind it. So for a lot of people, depending on my audience, I won't use ANCAP as how to describe myself. I'll use libertarian, anarchist, left libertarian. And then
especially if you're from Maryland and you got a bunch of liberals friends, you know.
Yeah, no kidding.
Totally. I mean, I grew up here. You grew up here too, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we know where we're coming from.
I was actually born in Jersey, but don't hold that against me.
I won't.
Cool, but like,
As long as you're not a Devils fan, though, that cannot be abridged.
Oh yeah, dude.
I'm a Ranger fan. We are mortal enemies.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck about sports, so I don't care who
Yeah.
you're.
Just joking, man. Come
so
on.
I mean, in terms of, if I were to say what is left libertarianism in a sentence, I'd say it's libertarianism with traditionally leftist values or concerns. But if I were to break it down, or I think in a more helpful way, a left libertarian is a libertarian. To say they're not, I think, is completely off. They are individualistic in their philosophy and outlook. They are absolutely pro in terms of market activity. They're not, I don't think I've ever met a syndicalist or a communist who kind of went under that moniker. They're anti-state. They are anti-authoritarian. But yes, okay, we get the libertarian part, but what's with that left qualifier? And my understanding, coming from an ANCAP background, I'd say the left qualifier is used for 4 main reasons. Number 1 is goals. A lot of people use that moniker just to denote, I am a libertarian because I believe it is the best way to achieve certain either egalitarian or gender equality, pro-LGBT norms, things like the best way to combat those type of bigotries. And it's important because there are a lot of very popular ANCAPs who might not be wrong in their ANCAPism, but they see it as a means to create these tribalistic outcomes of homogenized race and religion. And the ones I think of are Hop, Gary North. I think Walter Block has made some comments, but maybe not as bad. So there's a reason. So we almost want to make it no, we are this for these reasons, because it's a common critique of libertarianism. Oh, you don't care about the poor, or oh, you don't care about equal treatment of LGBT. You just want someone to be free to discriminate, which, yes, we believe freedom of association means freedom of dissociation, but we believe this because it's the best way to combat that. So one is goals. 2, I would say, is a criteria for property rights. So yes, while we believe in property rights, which I just define as a justified claim of exclusive use, meaning you are justified in using force if need be to exclude others from interference. But there is this thing about occupancy and use, which for years I didn't get, and I thought was completely incompatible and hostile, but at the end found it's completely compatible, and I think it's the right way to go. And ANCAPs who use Lockean property theories who come to a conclusion anti-occupancy use, I think they're getting it wrong. So we can definitely jump into that. A lot of ANCAPs by default believe that voluntary socialism, collective property, things like that are incompatible with this individualist philosophy, and left libertarians would point out it's not. A third reason is a historical reason, really. I mean, how common is it when you hear libertarians describe themselves as classic liberals? You know? And liberal, this day and age, is generally associated with very non-libertarian ideas.
Like, I have no problem with calling myself a classical liberal.
Right.
And if you just look at like the sheer definition of the term liberal, aside from
freedom.
politics, yeah, exactly, just
Yeah.
to be tolerant, basically.
Yeah. And even Jeffrey Tucker has been on this.
He's been taking it back, dude.
Yeah,
like
that's
in
his shtick
Clerks
lately. He's
when
been
they
trying
were
to take it back.
Wasn't it Clerks when they were trying to take back the term porch punky, or was that like Clerks 2?
That was
Yeah.
Clerks 2.
It's Jeffrey Tucker is trying to take back liberal, dude.
Yeah.
An equally worthwhile cause.
Yeah.
Taking it back.
So the thing about so the historical reason, again, just like with liberal, it doesn't mean what is almost ubiquitously used as today. And when I was introduced only through left libertarian literature, it was that the words capitalism and socialism meant different things. And a lot of our heroes, Lysander Spooner, he went to the International, which was a strictly socialist organization. Benjamin Tucker, Hodgkins, Warren, a lot of these really early free marketers of the day, which you can acknowledge may have some faulty economics, but they identified as socialists for, if you listen to the reasons, would make sense. Capitalism at the time, regardless of what you think about it now, at the time, it meant state privilege against people being able to homestead. In a brief nutshell, you being cut off from access to property and resources. You're not able to mix your labor with the soil because of these arbitrary enclosures. So left libertarians see themselves as part of a momentum greater than just late 20th century politics. So similar to how Jeffrey Tucker is trying to reclaim the word liberal. The fourth reason I would say is strategy. Left libertarians tend to be explicitly anti-political in terms of a means of gaining your freedom and liberation. They see themselves, if the free market is the way to solve social problems, we see ourselves as the market actors engaging in direct action and counter-economics. Samuel Konkin, considered himself in his agrarist philosophy to be of the left and left libertarian. So basically using direct action and counter-economics as the way to advance the liberation and freedom of peoples, as opposed to parliamentary and political means. So that would be my breakdown.
Yeah, what was I gonna say?
Oh my God, you're right. No, just kidding.
Yeah. Fucking. So with do you yourself how do you feel about voting? Like, would you not vote or?
The last time I voted was for Ron Paul in the 2008 primary. So it's funny. I think to this day I'm still a registered Republican.
So you didn't vote for him in the 2012 primary?
I did not vote for him in the 2008 general election, and I did not vote for him in the 2012 primary. I have not voted since. I don't vote. I view it as largely a waste. If you ask, what I think about libertarian candidates and maybe their increasing popularity in this election, I would say it excites me. In terms of a cultural trend that. That it's gaining more popularity than before. I mean, even my conservative, largely Republican parents, mostly for fiscal reasons, but they're both voting for Gary Johnson. And I remember when
awesome.
as a teenager, begging, vote libertarian, and then, oh no, it's a waste. And so it's
That'd be nice.
So the fact that
Still
more
working on
people are
mine.
saying,
Are your parents religious right at all?
not at all.
Those
My dad is Jewish, and my mom.
Fucking Jews.
Yeah. And my mom came from a
Jesus
Southern
Christ.
Methodist family, and they raised us without religious education. So we didn't get that. They were largely Republican for, I would say, fiscal reasons. But I mean, they still have some, a good deal of patriotism, and this is the greatest country, and
So they went to
Yeah.
public schools.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, fuck. What was I gonna say? My parents were very religious, right, and shit.
Oh yeah.
So they probably wouldn't vote for Gary Johnson because he's pro-choice. That would be a deal breaker.
Yeah.
They would.
Mine are
they,
doing the exact same thing, and mine are very, very religious.
they would probably find it more easily to get behind somebody like Austin Peterson, who I loathe. I wouldn't vote for him if he got it just because I think he's a dickhead.
Pyramids of pussy.
It's not really anything that he says. It's just how he says it. He's just like
Austin
annoying to me.
Pyramids of pussy.
Is he the guy from Libertarian Republic?
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
The huge
okay.
clickbait website.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Like every time I go
I have
to it,
some
I'm like, I
familiarity,
need to
but-
never go there again. But
Yeah.
now I have ad block, so it's not that bad.
Right.
I might click on it every now and then.
Don't you find him very abrasive, though?
I do personally, yes, but I feel like for Republicans, he might have done really well. Personally, I'm not interested in supporting a candidate like that.
I think he would have done well because I think his anger, plus his intelligence is more like it's a more marketable version of, I think, Donald Trump, because Donald Trump uses the same amount of anger and fervor, but the fact that he's literally talking down to people that don't agree with him and insinuating that they're not intelligent enough, actually, I think that would excite a lot of Republicans, because that's the exact same platform that Donald Trump uses.
Maybe, but I mean, I'm not interested. I don't know. I mean, personally, I think one of the reasons why I can get behind Gary Johnson is I think he's a likable dude.
Absolutely.
And we could all sit here and I could name.
He has been in the very space that this podcast is taking place.
Yeah, dude. He was on the podcast, and so he was sitting over there where you are. He actually jizzed like right where you're sitting. No, but
He talked about Milton Friedman, and it was just
Right.
he's bullload. And then, but yeah, man, I think he's a likable dude, and I could name a bunch of areas where the Johnson Well campaign has disappointed me. A big huge one would just be Bill
sure.
Weld in general.
Oh sure.
But at the same time, I feel like he's like 100 times more libertarian than either Trump or Clinton. And
Easily.
yeah, I mean, like with Trump,
That should be without a doubt. Yeah.
oh, absolutely.
yeah. So I mean, with voting, like I was actually a principled non-voter from the time I was like 16 until the time I was 20.
Can I make a confession that only here on Punk Rock Libertarians? I actually voted for George Bush when I was 18 years old. I voted for George W. Bush. I will freely admit that.
At that point, I was still a principled non-voter,
Yeah.
and
I'll get the scraper. We're gonna remove his tattoo.
like one thing I'll say, even though I didn't vote for Bush, but
Yeah.
Bush, as far as all the Republicans that were running at the time, he was the most non-interventionist out of all of them.
Are you talking about George Bush?
Yeah, George
Oh,
Bush.
as a candidate, yeah.
Well, his entire platform as he ran, his foreign policy platform was textbook right out of the libertarian mantra. Completely.
Yeah, but then of
Or
course he
at
got
least
elected and he didn't do that.
Relatively non-interventionist to a significant enough extent compared to
Which at that point I don't think he even considered getting into explaining it that far. But
Yeah.
and
But
then
hey,
Barack Obama took the
he was
exact same thing and did that.
yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
shortly after the 2000 election with Bush, I got into the Libertarian Party. And, one of the reasons why I decided I wasn't going to vote when I was 16, I actually read a Noam Chomsky book. And he was just diagnosing all the problems. And I agreed with his diagnosis. I, of course, didn't agree with his...
Solutions.
Solutions, yes.
Just as Bernie Sanders. That was the
Yeah,
only
'cause-
thing gripe I had.
Like I grew up with a true conservative mentality, I would say. I wanted government to be small as fuck because I didn't like the government at all. I didn't
Right.
trust them. And then, when I was like 20, I got heavy into libertarianism. And then I was like, wow, these people believe the exact same things that I believe as far as the Libertarian Party goes. So I'm like, if they're going to take the time to run, like all the time that it takes to run and all the money and all the effort, the least I can do is take 15 minutes out of the day and go put in a vote for them. So, then I started voting it,
Right.
And then as far as voting not doing anything, I think you're correct. I think you might have better odds with playing the lottery. But it's not everything that you can do. It's not the most important thing that you can do, but it is something that you can do very easily. And I don't know. Personally, like I think it is good to get psyched about the Gary Johnson thing, because honestly, like every 4 years, for some people, it's the most that they talk about politics. It's the best time to get them to listen.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean,
because a lot of people got into it with Ron Paul.
When the election comes around.
Did Ron Paul? Did he have a hand in getting you into libertarianism or?
None. No.
Yeah, same here. I got into libertarianism before I knew who the fuck Ron Paul was.
That
Ron Paul got me excited again.
For others, a lot of others, yeah.
Ron Paul got me excited again. I was always excited about politics and shit, but Ron Paul got juiced it up more. I'm like, what the fuck? This is like a 70-year-old congressman from Texas.
And it's funny.
And how the fuck did this guy ever get elected? Wow, this guy rocks.
Yeah, and like some of his comments, because I did follow him back in the day. I was interested in him. He wasn't my introduction. He wasn't how I learned liberty from, but of course, yeah, he gained some popularity, and I did learn of him. And I remember like watching some interviews. More than once, I want to say at least twice that I can recall, he made explicitly anarchist-friendly comments.
Yes.
Like, to agree that it's either acceptable and compatible, or it is respectable. Like the people who call themselves libertarians
there
are
actually
anarchists.
Yeah, there is an interview with him where he's on somebody's tour bus.
Yeah,
dude, I posted that on YouTube. Actually,
yeah. And when I heard that, I was like, "Holy shit! I am coming full circle now."
Well, yeah, this was a Motorhome Diaries video, which was put on by like Pete Iyer and Ademo Freeman, and they would just get people in the motorhome and do like interviews, and they would like travel around, and they went to like Spooner's grave and shit. But they had Ron Paul on the bus. Pete Iyer was talking to him.
Yeah.
And he was like, basically, what do you think about anarchists? And Ron Paul is like, well, if there are people like the Amish would gladly, not get involved with the state, and they would be just fine, and, we should leave them alone. And he's like, what I'm calling for is more individual freedom. He basically said it's compatible with his way of thinking. So like I took that video, the Motorhomes Diary video was like 30 or 40 minutes long, but I just cut out that portion and I made a video, is Ron Paul an anarchist, and put that on YouTube.
You know what? I think he actually made the Amish are the best example of what minus the decrease in technological advances. They're probably. I would more or less say the Mennonites would be a really good example of what libertarian society is about. Guess what? They existed well before the fucking roads did. Before the fucking roads, the Amish were living fine. Nobody was bothering them. The Mennonites were living fine. Nobody was bothering them. They continued to prosper at the same efficient rate without ever getting involved with the government. They've adapted to the surrounding, you can do it in an entire country. Use them as a litmus test for what a country would do functioning in a globalist society. Everything's growing up around it and changing, but they're withholding their same values the entire time, just adapting to new advances that the societies around them take.
And hey, look, they do have roads.
Yeah, and they have, and they have roads now, and because they've learned to adapt and be friendly. No one bothers them. Who's like, what, fuck that Amish guy? I've never heard of anybody singling out the Amish.
Maybe if you lived in Pennsylvania and you were like, you always had to get stuck behind buggies or something.
Well, not even that, but
maybe,
you don't even...
I'm just guessing.
If you think about it.
I mean, I think it's... Yeah,
they might be the only religiously influenced culture that no one's ever cared about them being themselves.
Dude, my dad actually loves to go to like Amish country and buy like Amish root beer.
Oh my god, it's amazing.
He'll get like cases of like the gallon containers and shit, and then he'll take his bottles back a couple months later.
Dude, it's the shoe fly pie. Shoe fly pie, man. That's where it's at. There's a Mennonite restaurant. Shoe fly pie, it's like, if you look like the consistency of pumpkin pie, but it's made out of just like molasses and sugar, and it is like the most delicious cake, I think, a pie I've ever had in my life. And it's made by Mennonites using old world methods. Well, they use the machines, but they have all the old original recipes. Nothing's changed. It's amazing. The food is great.
So like while we're on, so we just talked about like politics a little bit, and we talked about feeling the Johnson and shit. Like this week, he I guess Gary said about a week ago or something that he was like he believed in forced vaccines, and apparently now he says that he doesn't.
Yeah, I saw some headline that it was clarified afterwards. It's like, no, Johnson does not actually believe, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So, I don't know. It seems like he's done that a few times. He's kind of like said something, and then his team's like, you know, like, what are you doing? He's like, I didn't say that, did I? You know?
Well, I mean, let's be honest. He's not what we would call a hardcore consistent libertarian.
Oh, totally.
Right.
Not at all.
You
Not
know?
at all. But, I mean, I think he's a libertarian in the same way that I would say most people are libertarian. Most people are
Yeah.
fiscally conservative, socially liberal.
Exactly.
You know? So, I mean, and I think that's great, man. That's a great starting point.
It's a good introduction to, you know, introduce topics. Yeah.
Exactly. And, dude, well, when Gary Johnson brings people over and they start talking to you about libertarianism, you can introduce them to the finer points, you know? It's basically, he's basically bringing people to us, you know? I don't know. I think that's pretty great. And, you know, it's like I said, ultimately, you know, I do like the guy. I think he's like libertarian way more than anybody else. And he does, you know, like one thing, like with weed legalization and shit, like weed decriminalization. He was talking about this in 1999 as a Republican governor when nobody would touch this fucking issue. At that time, you know, nowadays it's easy because most people are actually against marijuana prohibition.
Right.
Then it wasn't.
Yeah. And you could even say similar to Bill Weld, who championed some pro-LGBT issues back in the 90s when that was unheard of.
Yeah, the Democrats weren't even talking about it.
Yeah, and never mind, like the Republicans. Which
Yeah,
is
that's
going to
be the most
himself.
unpopular thing for you to say as a Republican.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so there's definitely some respect you can give them for, you know, being more principled than Hillary Clinton or Trump.
Yes.
So, but I mean, ultimately, I don't know. Well, I think I would prefer a society in the short term where they're the president over Trump or Clinton. You know, I do think
you know, dude. You know that when
this is my reservation.
Prefer Gary over those two, right?
Yeah, my reservation though is I truly believe that a small government, a relatively free society, will become prosperous. As it becomes prosperous, there is the amount of tax revenue generation will just increase and to exponential proportions based on what exists before in the lesser free society that existed before, and the government will grow as like a parasite exponentially with it, to the point where you see new horrors now. Like, you could not have imagined as enormous a government as the United States of America is today when there was the Declaration of Independence and you know, the early in the Republic. I think you'd say something with the Roman Republic. You know, they started with some notions of property rights, and you know, I mean, you know, let's discount slavery, of course, but
yeah,
you know, and the empire that became. So, in terms of a long-term solution, I don't like it. I'm still skeptical to the bordering on hostile to it. But what I see as the cultural trend of interest in libertarian ideals, I like it. So.
You know, say if the society started doing better, like you say it would, and I believe it would too. So then you would generate more tax revenue because things are doing better. Yeah. So, but once you get people into those ideals, those people would I would think would be about, hey, we're doing better now. Let's take it further. And because that's what's really important, dude. It's not really politicians. Because, you know, here's why I think politics is a waste of time. I honestly think I'm doing more with like fucking website and Facebook than I could ever do with politics. I don't know. I mean, I'm just introducing ideas to people, right? And you start a discussion, which like I think I try to do that with people that I work with. I try to do that with customers. You know, I try to do that with like all sorts of people. Because the bottom line is, it's like with drug legalization or drug decriminalization. You know, once you change the mind of the people, and I think Facebook did a lot of that with like fucking memes and shit. I think libertarians were kicking ass on Facebook, dude. And I can say like a couple years ago, Facebook like really shut down our reach to where we had like 35,000 people and we were getting a 22 million reach, and then overnight we went down to a million reach. And right now with 151,000 people, we only have like a 2 million reach.
Right.
So, and imagine 35,000 people, we had a 22 million reach. Facebook's like fucking crushing that shit, dude. Whereas like when it was kind of like you know, when it was anarchy on Facebook, you're like, we were fucking doing awesome, dude. And I think that had a hand in decriminalizing drugs, because the bottom line is, like, the politicians have really no interest in doing what's right. You know, they're all about the money that's attached to the prison industrial complex, you know. But once the people change their mind and they're like, hey, this is what we believe in, we're not going to vote for you, you know, then these politicians stuck their finger out in the wind and they're like, okay, got to go that way.
And that is exactly the point of left libertarian strategy. Don't go directly for the politics. Change the culture. Whether it's Seth Rogen movies for going back 10 years ago where it's, you know, make pot is cool, or at the very least okay, like you're not gonna ruin your life. And
that's another argument too. I would say movies had a lot in that too, you know, because you're watching all these like stoner movies, which are some of my favorite comedies, by the way. You know, like Harold and Kumar and fucking Grandma's Boy.
Half-baked, bro.
Yeah.
Like, Abba, you my only friend.
Dude, I mean, because all these movies are joking about this and making light of it. Meanwhile, like, fucking, you've got the highest incarceration rate in the world, you know, living in a fucking rape cage all over a planet.
And it's still class 1.
Yeah,
it's still class 1.
But, dude, whatever. We fucking won. The drug war is on its way out the door. We should still push for it ending, and we should push for the decriminalization of all drugs. But I mean, I never thought that we'd actually see decriminalization of marijuana or legalization the way we have in these states. And I would bet a lot of older hippies would say the same, because, you know, they've been saying since they were a kid it's harmful, but it didn't look like it was going to end ever.
In Maryland, it's decriminalized, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
You can have, I think it's up to 10 grams, and the most you get is a fine.
Cool.
So, but
the
you know,
one thing Maryland has going for it.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure legalization's probably right around the corner, you know. But at the same time, you know, where I can say politics isn't the most important thing, but, you know, it does get people to talk about these issues like no other time. So, you know, it is a great opportunity to, you know, introduce philosophy and stuff like this.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. I don't count people out. I don't define people out of the overall libertarian umbrella. If they engage in political strategy, I just think if that is your emphasis, certainly if it's the only thing you do, or even if it's your emphasis, I would say there are probably better ways. I
mean, I don't know. If Gary Johnson believed that, we might not have him up there right now. And if you look at everybody else who he was running against, you know, I agree 98% of the time with Darryl Perry on I side with, but the guy's a fucking retard. So it's, you know, he would never have had the press of Gary Johnson either, you know? Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't write politics off. I mean, because especially you look at fucking Ron Paul got more people into this shit than anybody, dude. He produced the most amount of anarchists, you know?
And yet still people think that Bernie Sanders is the one that ignited the youth's passion for, you know, for their future. I mean, it's unbelievable to me to think that, like, people don't, like, even, which I would have figured the left would be a little maybe more inclusive. I mean that as the left, the left as we know it now would be a little more inclusive to say, you know, hey, Ron Paul actually got people, you know, interested in politics again, you know, from a real issues related point of view. He never gets that. He doesn't. I don't think he's ever given the credit as much as Bernie Sanders is.
Yeah, I mean, definitely not on as large of a scale.
I mean,
you know?
I don't know if you guys I might have mentioned it earlier that the group IAVA. You know, Iraq. It's Iraq veterans of Afghanistan in America. Yeah. That group is having a forum, a presidential forum, where it's specifically on foreign policy issues, foreign policy and mental health of veterans.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the broken VA system. We're talking about perpetual wars, really bad foreign policy. Maybe they'll bring up the fact that the current president's a Nobel Peace Prize winning drone striker. I don't know. But these are the issues that actually matter. Like, these are important issues because it involves taking money away from people through heavy taxation. This has massive implications, and they are excluding Gary Johnson. Though they're excluding him, even though they know among active duty military, he
like
polls higher than both Trump and Clinton. And they're excluding him from a group that's demanding him.
Yeah.
It boggles the mind. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's insanity too. I feel like right now, you know, it is a good time to take an interest in politics, and you know, right now there's petitions and shit that you could sign, because if you can get Gary Johnson into this like first debate of sorts, that kind of sets the you know, it kind of sets the flow for the rest of the election.
If he
And-
gets into the debates, he won't have to worry about advertising himself anymore,
And
because
is
that
this
would
in
be
front
the
of a
hottest
military
fucking
audience?
news story.
Is this in front of a military audience?
It's in front of a military audience.
Yeah, that's the other thing, where an audience that fucking loves him. You know, this could totally change the tide of everything.
Because you think
And,
about it,
you know, if you
the
want to spread
public
these
is supposed to
ideas, it's a
support-
great time.
The public always says, support our troops, support our troops, support our troops. But when it comes to the fact that we want to say, maybe you should look, if you want to really support us, as an Iraq veteran myself, if you really want to support veterans, why don't you look at the candidates that we feel, because not to say all military is like this, but honor is a big thing with military. Even to me this day, I get very sentimental about, you know, my service, because that's something that's important to me. He's the only person that actually recognizes that, you know, he has those same honorable principles. Maybe he's not Ron Paul, which he's not, but they want him. Most people want to vote for him. Most vets, they would vote
You know,
for him.
in some ways, I would say Gary Johnson is better than Ron Paul. Not for me, not for libertarianism.
Marketability.
But I think as far as getting people from the left interested, I think Gary Johnson's great at that. Like it. You know,
I
it's
think that's
actually
where
been,
Bill Weld
they've
is
said
starting to
recently that
shine,
he's taking
too.
more votes from like fucking Hillary than he is from Trump.
Recently, yes.
So, and ultimately, out of the two, I would take Trump over Hillary. I wouldn't ever vote for him. You'd have to hold a gun to my head and force me to choose between the two. And I'm not going to die for the shit. I'll vote for him then. You know, that would be fucking dumb if you ask me. But, you know, I'll vote for him then. And here's why I would take him over Clinton. You know, so Donald Trump can't even get all the Republicans behind him. He's got them arguing. They're not going to be able to pass shit. You know, the Democrats aren't going to be able to pass shit because you got the Republican majority right now. So if you want to do nothing state, you know, between Hillary and Trump, you know, it's Trump. It seems like you get a lot of do nothing. They wouldn't be able to pass shit either side.
Yeah, I disagree, because the executive branch is by far the most powerful branch, and that trajectory gives no evidence of slowing. So when you have someone like Donald Trump, who is straight across the ticket, you name the issue, his answer is increased state power. So, and the fact that as a candidate, I mean, we're talking about like George Bush as the candidate or Obama as the candidate. Donald Trump as the candidate has said some truly scary and fascistic ideas. If he were president, and with the power that accompanies that, I don't know. I find it terrifying.
Well, I would too. In a Donald Trump,
think
in a
we'd
Donald
see
Trump dream
an
world,
increase
I
in
would
executive
too.
orders too.
But
he would executive order everything he thought was a good idea.
Here's one thing that you're not accounting for, dude. He's more hated than George W. Bush already, dude. And George W. Bush had the liberal media, you know, breathing down his neck the entire time. The Clinton News Network, you know what I mean? Whereas like anything Trump does, you know, he's going to have like people criticizing him. I don't think he's going to be able to get away with that much. Whereas with Hillary Clinton, she's got the machine greased and oiled. She's got all the big money behind her. You're looking at the nth degree of business as usual, worse than we've ever seen it, because nobody knows how to work the system like a Clinton.
She's already killing people. I'm sorry.
Well,
It
yeah,
needs to be said.
as
Hillary
governor,
Clinton
dude.
has already had people killed off for the possibility of becoming the president.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you want to go into her connections to the Rothschilds and the Rockefeller family, that, you know, basically say that this has already been decided, that she's going to most likely win. And this is unless the, you know, people start taking back their voting power.
Yeah, I mean, Hillary Clinton, she's just a standard neocon. She's Bush 3.0, Obama was Bush 2.0.
Oh yeah, she said she was a Goldwater
She's like the
girl.
most pro-war person ever, dude.
What's that?
She's the most pro-war person ever.
Yeah.
Like Trump has actually put, and I don't want to like defend Trump too much because
he has spoken out against the Iraq War and saying it's a failed war and it needs to end and bring the troops home. He has mentioned that. I will give him that.
Aside from Rand Paul, he was the most non-interventionist Republican. You know, and there are things that he says that I despise, like imposing a 30% tariff on Chinese goods. I mean, the only person that's going to pay
China.
The only person that's going to pay that is the taxpayer. You know,
Right.
You'd think he'd like China more because
The
they
customer.
also have a fucking wall. You'd think he'd like them more just based on that. He's basically, you know, China, I'm going to borrow your, you have a good idea. I'm going to borrow your idea. I'm going to build a wall right along the line of Mexico and make them pay for it. It's going to happen. He's an asshole. The guy's he's a fucking asshole. There's no way around it. But I do agree with him that I think it's terrifying. I think the idea of because you're not looking at the widespread social implications, because I guarantee you people are fired up already between the Black Lives Matter movement and the opposing side now, and I call it opposing because we're just looking at sides of the spectrum, not their ideals or how idealistic they are. The Blue Lives Matter group or the All Lives Matter group. The United States is more polarized right now than it's ever been. It's a powder keg. It's an absolute fucking powder keg. And if that man gets elected, I guarantee you're going to see an increase in violence, and I'm not going to say to the brink of civil war,
Right.
but at this point, you're making the grounds very fertile for it. Hillary, I think that it would be bad. I think as far as
Undoubtedly.
it'd be as far as the ongoing government corruption and the continued drug-addled sleep of the American public to just continually look at a woman who lies, and it is proven she has lied by quote liberal media sources that she's a liar, and people are like, well, look at all the good stuff she's done. Like I think her getting elected propagates a less even further less astute, politically astute populace. Hers induces a nation of zombies, and Trump's is the cast of The Walking Dead or The Walkers. That's what you're looking at. You're looking at either like a psychotic Rick Grimes or being a zombie.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. It sounds like your argument is like if Donald Trump gets elected, it could advance the momentum of history. That could
absolutely.
Okay. And
the complete and total death of the republic.
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, dude.
I don't feel like I'm smart enough to say, but I feel like libertarians, we should not be.
We should not be voting for either, or
we should be
encouraging
sticking,
and I will not.
To principle,
Oh, dude, I'm not a libertarian for Trump by any means. I never have been.
No.
He's fucking horrible. He's like, just as bad as Hillary.
We're watching a map of the United States burn, like on a podcast. That's basically what we're doing. We're like, it's going to go the picture's going to burn to one side or the other.
Piece of shit
just waiting to
versus
see which
turd
one.
sandwich, and we're not talking about like actually choosing one or the other. We're just saying like if somebody held a gun to your head and made you choose between the two, I don't see Donald Trump getting much of anything done. He's just so hated by the media and politicians aside, Yeah.
Gun to my head, I would vote for if it was me or dying, and I would consider dying very much so before I vote for Donald Trump. I probably would.
Live to fight another day, dude.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, but it's not even that though. But because I think he is so retarded, he's so dumb. He has no idea of what he's talking about.
He has, and if you don't respect the office as much as libertarians should not respect the office, that's the kind of person that you want in there. Somebody that nobody's going to fucking respect.
He's so dumb. I would be less afraid of his policy making, but I'd be more afraid of public reaction to his election.
That's another thing too, man. Fucking. I think it'll be cool to hate the government again if Donald Trump's elected.
Yeah.
The Democrats will be anti-war again, right? They're going to be anti-war again this time?
Yeah, you're talking to him. It's cool to hate the government in Bush, right?
Yeah, I remember that when the night that Obama won, whatever it was, I went to an anti-flag concert in D.C. And I was pissed that night because there was such excitement and happiness over the fact that Obama was now president and he was progressive and he was going to change things, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, he's good.
And
I already had set up. Okay.
There we go.
Go ahead. Sorry. I got it.
Yeah, no worries.
No, this way so we can sit back.
So I went to this anti-flag concert because I wanted to feel some rage. I wanted some rebellion against this mainstream, jubilance against this elation of the Obama presidency. And I remember that because hey, Bush is over. It's now Obama. He's going to close down Guantanamo and
the change we can believe in.
Yeah. And I remember I went to this anti-flag concert wanting to just hear rage against this, still fuck that, absolutely not.
It's still the same shit,
right,
just because it's him.
And I remember anti-flag, the singer, I don't know his name, but he stood up. He's like, look, this should be considered a victory, we shouldn't consider it the end victory, but this is a step in the right direction. So let's take this moment to celebrate. And I was just like, oh, you just harshed my buzz so much. I don't think I've probably haven't listened to Anti-Flag since.
I actually stayed at the singer's house once.
Oh yeah.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Did you get the bomb?
No, my ex-wife actually worked for Go-Kart, and she lived in Pittsburgh, and she was friends with Anti-Flag.
Did your ex-wife get the bomb?
I don't know, but you know what? I have nothing to say of that. She's married anyway, dude.
I was just making jokes, dude.
I know, but on the off chance that someone might be listening that knows them personally, as you know, this is punk rock libertarians. Yeah. No, he is married. Not like that. Even funny joke though.
Yeah. Okay.
No, but I stayed at his house. He's a very nice guy.
Yeah. The last time I saw Anti-Flag, I think it was like 2001.
Yeah.
Actually, fuck. Maybe it was like 2000. I don't know. Anyways, like they were talking like some political rant, and I don't know. Yeah, same thing. It was pissing me off as well. You know, I still like the first fucking. I guess Die for the Government, which wasn't their first record, their second technically, and then A New Kind of Army. I like some of the tunes.
That was good, man.
Yeah,
I remember when Hot Topic got that album in, because it was like the closest record store within like 5 minutes. Where you might find a good punk record was maybe going to Hot Topic.
And
whenever they put in the listening station.
Whenever I put A New Kind of Army on, I get to This Is Not a Crass Song, and I get pissed off because it's like
because it should be
exactly, yeah, exactly. You could have made this better if you weren't such jokesters about it. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's like the Casualties. Like it's become a joke unto itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's those guys. They seem to be, really authoritarian.
Oh, we're more punk rock than you are. That's like the Donald Trump of the punk rock world.
They don't really get anarchy at all, if you ask me.
No, they all wear a uniform already. That's not anarchistic in the least.
My buddy in high school, my buddy scratched my Anti-Flag record, so he went to go see them at the Loft in Baltimore, and he went, so he had to like replace it, and. So he goes to buy it, and they were charging, I think it was like $8, where at that time that was a lot of money to sell your record for if you're a band on tour. And then, so he was waiting with the drummer was waiting on him, and he's like, $8, really? He's like, do you guys charge tax? And then the merch guy was there too, but the drummer was dealing with him. The merch guy just started, and then the drummer just gave him some really nasty look. I still think that's a hilarious story.
Did they actually charge tax? So that would have been even better.
No, they didn't charge tax.
No. Taxation is theft, by the way, in case you guys haven't heard.
Yeah.
Have you guys heard?
I think I've heard that someplace.
Okay, just reminding you.
So where are we next on the agenda for tonight?
Oh, since we discussed a bit of punk rock as well. You mentioned you were a vegan earlier, and you had some very personal reasons.
Okay, we'll get to the veganism, man. I want to fucking talk about punk rock, dude. Tell us about punk rock. Tell us about like how you got into punk rock.
How I got into punk rock. All right, so probably not uncommon amongst some 11, 12, 13-year-olds at the time. I was into I skateboarded, and I was kind of into the skater pop punk. Like I really liked Blink-182,
Pennywise,
and Alistair, and Sum 41, and was it SR-71? Yeah, I think SR-71.
They weren't even punk though, dude.
Oh god, that was not punk. That was like
their singer used to be in a band called Honor Among Thieves, and they were like the hip alternative band that never got signed to a big label.
Dude, that's
well,
like the
guitarist came to my school once, and for one of our guitar classes, so I appreciated that.
Do you also do you like the Counting Crows too? Maybe Letters to Cleo.
My mom liked the Counting
Counting Crows. Okay, whatever. As much as unpopular, not punk it is. I mean, I think that August and everything after had some really good songs on it.
I will admit, I also just did see Bush.
But I also do love the Down by Law Strong Counting Crows Must Die. That they play like 3 songs on one record, on All Scratched Up.
So I had a friend who had an older brother who was more into music, and he kind of gave me this one CD. It was a mix CD, and it had a Pennywise song on it, Alien, which is actually, at this point, one of my least favorite Pennywise songs. But at the time, I was like, okay, cool, because this is like supposed to be a hardcore band or whatever. And I remember I went to a local mall, I think to the Pac Sun, back when they used to have band shirts still.
Oh, shit.
And I saw Pennywise, like, oh, this is one of those cool bands. Oh, I'm going to get a Pennywise shirt. I'm going to be cool, yeah. And I get to the register to buy this Pennywise shirt, and the cashier says, oh, you like Pennywise? And I'm like, yeah, yeah, I like Pennywise. They're like, oh, cool. What album do you like? And I'm just like, can I have my shirt now? Like, because I didn't know. So I was like,
You don't listen to the band and you bought the shirt?
I listened to one song.
Anyway.
Anyway, so I was like, oh shit, I need to buy one of their CDs if I gotta, justify myself to the next person.
What was the first one you got?
It was Full Circle.
Oh, yes, that was so great,
And
dude.
I had no idea what I was getting into, so I bought it, and I went down into my parents' basement where I had a hobby at the time of making World War II airplane models. And I'm in this dark,
That's still punk
dingy
rock.
basement with this one lamp, and I had this like boombox, and I put the CD in. And for anyone knows how Full Circle starts,
Greed.
Fight till you die. No,
yeah.
that's straight ahead.
Oh, I thought straight ahead.
Dude, are you even
Alone in
punk?
your own society.
Hey, man. It's been a long
The way
time.
it just starts, it is just full force, and I just
right
kind
away.
of stopped. And I think in the first song, it had like, not only was it this intensity that I'd never heard, but they were using words like fight back and anarchy and all this stuff. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And part of me was like, what are these guys talking about? So I then I don't know if it was Google at the time, but I started looking up, anarchism and things like that. So I don't know. I don't even know what about it specifically drew me to it, but I again very quickly fell in love with it, and the rest is history.
Yeah, dude. Like fucking Full Circle. I remember getting that the shit the day it came out, and then same with the one before that. Fucking About Time. That's which I believe they're touring on that album soon. They're gonna play the whole thing.
Yeah,
in its
just
entirety.
strictly that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's cool because like I pop that on and it's like.
For me, it was their first album, dude.
First album's fucking awesome too.
For
Dude.
it was the first. For me, it was the first album.
Yeah, and fucking Unknown Road, I think tops the first album. But I mean, first album's still really good, dude. Yeah, fucking like they were as a teenager, they were like one of my favorite bands.
It was the song Pennywise because at one point I was like, oh man, I wonder if they're talking about the clown from It. I wonder if that's the reason why. And then when I got through the album, and it's like then they were actually singing about Pennywise, and I love horror movies, so I was like,
Yes.
this is awesome. They named it after a Tim Curry character. This is really cool.
Totally. So like after Pennywise, like what other shit did you get into?
I got into a lot of the 90s resurgence bands, like Rancid was a big one.
Yeah, love them.
Meh.
Oh gosh, and
I'm an Operation Ivy fan.
I like
Operation
Operation Ivy
Ivy
too, yeah.
followed from that. I still really like Rancid. Oh, Social Distortion to this day is one of my favorite bands. I like their early stuff. I like their late stuff, even though it's not the tempo slowed down. So Social Distortion was a big one. And then in college, my next door neighbor was this anti-deodorant crust punk, and he got me into Discharge and Crass and Subhumans, and I've that was probably my next step. I actually just saw the Subhumans when they came by DC. A lot of fun.
Oh, that's cool.
Word. Yeah.
So SLC Punk was like, that's the punk state of mind you're in at
Yeah,
that point.
I remember when I saw that movie, and I just remember being excited. Like, oh, this guy had a mohawk. That's cool.
That movie is still to this day one of my favorite movies.
I don't like it now when I look back, because it makes it despite
makes
the
it
fact
look-
that I
makes it look
love
like
the
a phase
soundtrack.
to me.
Don't get me wrong.
Oh, absolutely.
But I remember when I showed it to my wife and even to my mom, because it was back 10, 15 years ago. It just made it seem so much more immature and thoughtless than I think what both punk rock and other anarchist, rebel movements are.
Well,
So-
at that time point though, that was pretty common.
Like I remember
Just the
seeing that.
rebellions.
Right.
I remember
Yeah.
seeing SLC Punk, and I was like, I don't know. I lightened up like years later thinking about it, but at first it kind of pissed me off because at the end of the movie it's like, oh, it's like a phase. And it's like, fuck you, it's not a phase.
Yeah.
And I'm still like that because I'm still like, I'm fucking 36 years old. I'm just as much
no,
into punk rock.
dude, it's literally, if you close your eyes and you just listen, you hear what it's about. This guy was really punk. He was all into this, blah blah blah, and then like something happened in his life that made him grow up. It didn't say he changed his music style, so it could very well be
No,
a comparison of of Ian MacKaye.
Didn't he say he's
going to
buying in?
Fugazi.
Yeah, he
Wasn't
said, that's the whole thing. It's like, I guess I'm just part of the system now.
But then
you
he
know?
looks up and he's got this. He's like, I guess the whole time I was a fucking poser. And he looked up and he's got this grin in his eyes. Like, I think that was the next gradual stage for
Maybe.
those punks to go through. I mean, like I said, look at Ian MacKay, like, or like Henry Rollins. They're still, maybe it's not traditional 9 to 5, but they've grown up. They become adults. That's what I think it is. I think it's not punk. I don't think punk rock is a phase. I think that immature aspect of punk rock is a phase.
I guess none of us have mohawks anymore.
Dude,
No,
favorite
dude,
punk
I
movie
blew
ever,
hair.
dude. Favorite punk movie ever. Have you guys seen Suburbia 1983?
No.
Suburbia's good.
Dude, seriously, like you
This
gotta
is
see
this
that
is
fucking movie.
England.
Homework assignment.
This is England was one of the movies I loved because
Yeah.
it was about the beginning of the skinhead movement and the National Front, but it did bring in like the edgier, the oi punk.
Did they
aspect
talk about
into it.
Screwdriver at all?
Wait, was
um,
that the one with Russell Crowe?
No, that's Romper Stomper.
Yeah, that was
Oh,
a
that's,
cool
okay.
movie.
yeah,
too.
that's Romper Stomper. That's another good one. But that's in Australia.
Okay.
Yeah, but this one is in like Manchester. So I mean, it was really cool just to see how the punk rock the mindset, at least when. I think it honestly also defines like the break in from skinhead to bonehead, like the Nazi punks versus the, just the regular oi punks. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Basically like the sharps or the boneheads.
Well, like Suburbia was just like kids coming from like fucked up homes, living in a squat in like a neighborhood that was pretty much like demolished in like California somewhere.
Yeah.
And like they were just like living on their own and shit, and they were just like kids being kids. They actually for the movie they didn't get like child actors. They the director Penelope Spheris, who went on to direct Wayne's World, and before that she did The Decline of Western Civilization.
I love Wayne's World.
That's
That's about the germs?
actually in this movie there's DI is in it, and TSOL, and also the
this
Vandals.
was the big one. Yeah, this was a really big documentary when it came out.
Well,
right?
it's not a documentary, it's a movie. It's 1983. It's just
What am
about
I
these
thinking
fucked
of?
up kids, man.
Well, no,
it's-
there was the documentary that was done on that
Decline of
whole-
Western Civilization.
I thought
Yeah,
that was
the
about the
germs were in
germs.
that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, germs were in that.
That documentary. I remember when it came out, and it was like, holy crap, this is great. Like, it actually uses an anthropological point of view to describe punk rock. Like, we've been validated as a movement. It's validated as a real music style. We've made it into a documentary. Like, that was a good moment.
You were seeking validation,
No, if I...
dude. I just want to validate you, dude. If that's what you need, dude. I don't want you to be triggered.
Man, why you gotta be like that?
I'm sorry, as a left libertarian, I need to retreat to my safe space.
All right. Hey, listen, this podcast is the University of Chicago right now. No safe spaces. There are no safe spaces in the real world. This is a free speech zone.
Yeah. So, yeah, man. Anything else on the agenda for tonight, Joshua?
We were talking about we mentioned the EpiPen, didn't we? Did we get into that?
Yeah, well, I just want to bring it. How did you, as a left libertarian, feel about the EpiPen? Like, what do you think, dude?
I mean, it's a pretty classic example of state privilege. I mean, it's
crony capitalism.
exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so we all agree there, and I think it was a great time to bring up to all my like fucking liberal friends on Facebook, because I grew up in Maryland, and I love those fuckers. But it's a great time to bring up. It's from the FDA granting government grant of monopoly to the EpiPen. That's why the prices are up. It's if you didn't have that, you wouldn't have that.
If there's one thing that you wanted to do to make healthcare more affordable, one thing, just removing IP would probably be the most significant step you could
To
take.
make everything more affordable. You want to talk about wealth equality, or wealth inequality. When a great way to fix it, that's called competition. That's called markets. No government granted monopolies. More people should be, I think, about like ending IP. It's and there's a lot of libertarians that'll argue to the death about like how they love IP, and
But here's one thing, another thing. Now, as long as we're talking about kind of the economic landscape and what are the driving forces that might result in some of these symptoms we're witnessing now. IP is a common one noticed among libertarians, but another one that is not mentioned among most libertarian literature, and I don't think it is incompatible with like anarcho-capitalism or libertarianism, but it's just something that I don't think is talked about, and what I truly feel is valuable about left libertarian literature is what happened with land and enclosure in the history of how capitalism developed, as it actually did. I'm not talking about theory here. If you theory, what ANCAPs define as capitalism, that's cool, that's fine. But what I mean by that is, like, even Ayn Rand and others look back to the Industrial Revolution as an example of free market action solving social problem, raising standards of living, whereas the actual historical record reflects that there had been an enclosure movement in England going on for centuries, and it had even ramped up just in the past, looking at the 18th century. I think it was like 20% of all arable land that had been worked by peasants, people who, by Lockean theory, had a legitimate claim to it, were kicked off or made renters under very unfavorable conditions. And it shuffled all of these people into the cities, which made this cheap supply of labor available, and really what truly fueled the factory system, what developed the beginning of the industrial capitalism in the UK. And similarly in the US, again, we're talking about things that what shaped the economic landscape we have now. Post Civil War, what was it? I forget the title of the article. I wish I could remember it, but it was talking about how the land grants through post-Civil War, through the Grant administration, some of the administrations after, which are completely characterized by remarkable levels of corruption that we probably don't even see to this day. The amount of land that was given to via railroad grants and similar activities, it was in the millions and millions of acres. To the statistic that I read, it was like 6 times the surface area of France was given during this westward expansion. And this was the most valuable land, because when you drive a railroad across, that becomes the most commercially desirable, most profitable land. And that's just automatically given to a politically cronyist class, and and taken away from the actual forces of labor and workers, entrepreneurs. So, and I think that's one of the biggest things we see to this day, just those sort of movements or momentum of history. And I think it's completely discounted by most mainstream libertarians this day, which is, not that it's incompatible, but I would strongly recommend people go to C4S. They'll get a lot of historical lessons that I think will make you a more worldly, give you a more worldly philosophical aspect that is that will strengthen your libertarianism and your anarchism.
C4SS.org. Yeah.
Yep.
So have you written articles for them, or I believe you had? Or,
I've written one. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. It was when Jeffrey Tucker wrote his article against libertarian brutalism, which I thought was great. And the main point of this article, if you haven't written it, it was it was meant to be an introspective piece for libertarians, analyzing why are you a libertarian. And he kind of highlights 2 archetypes, which he didn't think were real life examples, but more just two archetypes that he kind of saw similarities between, in terms of why people became libertarians. And it was, in read the article, but in summation, it was, 1, because you believe in the liberation and freedom of people, and you think that'll lead to a better world, and you care about the freedom of yourself and others. And 2nd, because you want the freedom to be an asshole. I mean, there's a little more to it, but in a rough nutshell, that's it. And he's not the first person who made this. A lot of people thought this was like a new thing. Nathaniel Branden actually made a very similar, if not very close to the exact same argument, back in the 70s. And Nathaniel Branden was an objectivist. He was not an anarchist, but he was an objectivist. He was big in the libertarian movement. And he made a speech at one of the Libertarian Party conventions back in the 70s when they had like a really good year where their numbers were surging, and there was some elation and hope. And he noticed, as a psychologist, that was his main profession. He was a psychologist as well as a philosopher. He noticed a trend among a lot of the liberty folks that he thought was detrimental. So again, he called for an introspective analysis to why you are a libertarian. So anyway, Jeffrey Tucker got a lot of backlash to his article, which I really didn't get the backlash. So I wrote a very little article in defense of Jeffrey Tucker relating to that article, where I defended his position, and I agreed that introspection is a good thing, and we should probably, again, if not necessarily arguing for ruling them out, defining them out, but maybe just being a little skeptical for certain unsavory elements. Like, I think one of the examples he had in mind was like Chris Cantwell at the time, and we saw where he's gone since.
Dude, like I bitch about him a lot, and one of the guys that we have on the podcast on the regular, this dude Ethan Montgomery, who's really fucking cool, but he's a huge Chris Cantwell fan.
That's unfortunate.
I know. I mean, but dude, Ethan is really fucking cool, and I would love to actually have you and Ethan on, because like he's like he's like a lot of libertarians, you know. He came from the right, and he's very against like anything with left in the front of it, you know. So, you know, like, I would love to hear like you guys riff it out, and I'll try to just be the voice of reason in the middle. But I mean, not that Ethan isn't a reasonable dude. Like, I think Ethan's fucking awesome. Yeah, I think it would be a good conversation. But yeah, it's Cantwell. You know, I bitch about the guy a lot. Like, recently, he like blocked me because he posted something about, and this is after being friends with him for years, you know. And like, if anything, like you're probably thinking like, why were you friends with this guy for years? And it's like, he's kind of entertaining.
I used to really like Stefan Molyneux. I'm not judging.
It's not that I really liked Chris Cantwell. I like some of Chris Cantwell. I saw him speak at PorcFest in 2013, and he literally put chills down my spine. And he wasn't doing any of his like offensive racist stuff. He was just like speaking from the heart. I thought, you know, and like, he kind of frustrates me because like, I feel like he is a great speaker, and I feel like he no doubt you know, he has a way to like get the people, but
he encapsulates anger that I think is common amongst
but I feel like if he
libertarians.
did it in a better way, you know, as a like, nowadays he's doing like all the fucking basically racist shit, dude. Like,
no, not basic racist shit, explicitly racist and white supremacist shit.
I don't know if I'd go as far as to say that it's explicitly, but I mean, dude, he was doing some ridiculous shit. Like, I remember in February, it was like Black History Month, so he did like an episode about like some black lady who was like having more kids to get more welfare money or something. Right. You know, just like some horrible story about a horrible black person, where it's like, dude, you could find a white person doing the same fucking shit, you know?
But he's come out as being in favor, same as Stefan Molyneux, of what is that genetic theory called, where you're either a rabbit or a wolf, and it says letters to denote which kind, and basically some races are amongst this trend, and the white race is the wolf class, which is better for whatever bullshit reason. He has explicitly said like, the positive comments about the 14 words, which is 14 is a Nazi shorthand for we must secure the future for the white race and white children. I don't know exactly, but it's something like that. So I mean, I feel comfortable saying no. He has explicitly said that. I'd have to pull out my smartphone and like go through to find like examples. But
I'll believe you. Yeah. Okay, I mean, he's had some fucked up shit that's pissed me off. You know,
we're still talking about the same person.
Right? And then Chris Cantwell.
Yeah.
And
we're
then,
still talking about him because it started to sound like Donald Trump.
Yeah, like exactly. And then, oddly enough, he is one of those libertarians for Trump, you know. He'd probably rag on Ron Paul, but he would be all about Trump, which is whatever. Anyways, so, like, the thing that got me, that got him to, like, block me was he posted something about, like, how we should go back to arranged marriages.
Yeah,
and the whole time I'm thinking, it's probably, your fat ass probably can't get laid, and so you want somebody's, like, father to, like, force them to marry you.
Yeah. It's like some Borat shit.
Meanwhile, you know,
for 50 gallons pesticides, you may have my daughters.
Yeah, it's like what man is gonna like want to like
give me
entrust his lot to Chris Cantwell and daughter?
It sounds like you're casting your lots.
So all I did was respond on his comment or his Facebook post and say, "Really? Do you even identify as libertarian anymore?" And then so he blocked me. That's all I said. What?
Yeah.
So he blocked you because of that?
Yeah. Whereas, like, I'm one of those people. Like, I don't think I'm good. I don't think Cantwell should have been banished from the fucking Free State Project. That kind of pissed me off, you know. And at the same time, he's bitching about that, but then he's gonna like block me, and he's bitching about being banished from the Free State Project.
I was very happy to hear that he is not invited.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. I'll just like. I don't know. I mean, I'm not happy about them banning Ian Freeman either. You know.
I don't know enough to comment.
It's I don't know. They seem to be kind of block happy, and I can tell you with like punk rock libertarians, like I rarely block anybody. People get pissed that I don't block people.
Yeah.
Well, there was
Like-
that one dude who kept posting all this weird.
Exactly.
This
You
weird,
were getting pissed at me that I wouldn't block them.
No, well,
And-
because the dude was like calling people posers based on what music he
And-
thought they listened
and at
to.
this
I'm
point-
like, this is not why we're talking here,
At this
dude.
point, he shut the fuck up.
He's gone.
I like to keep people around because hopefully they'll learn something while they're there, and
Right.
hopefully people be respectful, and you know, and I think you catch more flies with honey rather than vinegar. And you know, I didn't want to make this page to be like a libertarian, punk rock libertarian circle jerk. You know,
Yeah.
like I actually want to get more people into the issues. I want to advance our movement. I want to advance freedom. So you know, it's you know like dissenting points of view. You know, I'm all about like you know talking with those people. You know, so I want to thank Alex for coming on, and I'd like to have you on again if that's cool.
Yeah, man, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, dude, it's a fucking blast. And
I think
I'd
we
li-
live like 20
Yeah.
miles away, so.
cool. I also want to thank Josh for coming on again.
Yeah, no problem, man.
And-
Anytime.
Yeah, dude, and yeah. So I guess that's about it for this week. Until next time, live free.
Or die.
Live fast, die young.
Yeah, totally.
Statism's blood break, the blood that is shed. Drenching the flags on the tax bombs in red. Wasn't by a few at the expense of the many. So do the cards in the death machine. You can't justify killing by economic gain. For God, country, and democracy. You can put freedom in gunpoint in a foreign land. You support the troops, then bring them home. I believe that you will do the best for you. And I believe that we have the power, have the power. I hate the state, and I know I'm a slave. We can make a break the power, break the power. Society owes individuals nothing more than non-interference with natural rights. Once a virtuous person fully comprehends the non-aggression principle, the violence in the state becomes obsolete.